In this first episode in a two-part series, we trace the fascinating story of a thing so beautiful that Europeans once called it white gold and believed it was made with magic. Join me in Jingdezhen, the porcelain capital of the world, and the reason why China is called China.
G'day guys! Have you ever wondered why the country China is called China? China, or porcelain, is one of the greatest Chinese inventions. And once upon a time, most of the world's porcelain came from a town called Changnan. Warped by the foreign tongues of ancient ceramics traders, Changnan became China. Today, the town is no longer called Changnan. It's now a city called Jingdezhen. And Jingdezhen is known as the porcelain capital of the world. It's here in Jingdezhen that the porcelain story is still being told.
In this Travelogue episode, the first of two in Jingdezhen, we delve into the pulsing world of porcelain, exploring its history in this prefecture-level city, population 1.6 million. Jingdezhen is located in Jiangxi province in China's southeast. Here, a casual stroll through the streets reveals just how much this place lives and breathes ceramics. Say the name Jingdezhen to any Chinese person, and they'll automatically think taoci, pottery and porcelain.
Ha! Look! Even the lampposts are made of porcelain.
The best place to begin our porcelain journey is the Jingdezhen China Ceramics Museum, which I've heard is the biggest ceramics museum in the country. It only opened in 2015, and within its airy, contemporary spaces, ceramic enthusiasts can find a whopping 400,000 pieces of pottery on display, and knowledgeable guides to walk you through the porcelain story.
进入宋代，中国瓷业呢已经进入一个百花齐放的景象。Jingdezhen呢就在这种激烈的竞争中脱颖而出，成功烧造这些俊秀挺拔的青白瓷，就是青中色中呢有白，白里呢有泛点青色，赢得了假玉器的美称。
所以Jingdezhen就是从宋代开始出名了。
对的，因为在宋代景德元年间，真宗皇帝就把他的年号赐给长南镇做地名。
That was the year 1004, more than a whole millennium ago. Over time, the most renowned type of porcelain shifted from Qingbai to the Qinghua variety, which is distinctive to Jingdezhen.
到了元代呢，就开始用瓷石与高岭土二元配方法浸制瓷，成功烧造这种青花瓷，是中国陶瓷史具有划时代的意义。当时元代是蒙古人掌政的，而且那人特别做生意贸易性非常强，把波斯引进的苏麻离青带到中原生产青花瓷进行买卖。
这个就是你们的针管子。
对的，元青花传世极少，颇为珍贵。全世界的元青花不到400件，这就有一件就在我们的本馆呢。我们可以看到，它采用的是波斯引进的苏麻离青。所以发色非常好，而且有铁锈般的黑斑，用手触摸一下凹凸不平的感觉，这就是元青花的独特风格。
我可以去摸一下吗？
可以的。
Nah, she was just kidding. As if they'd let me get my grubby hands on that paragon of porcelain. Anyway, it's more than enough for me to feast my eyes on all the exquisite items on display. Naturally, as the centuries passed, the wares became more sophisticated and complex, and gained a reputation overseas as exclusive commodities for the nobility and wealthy. It was Marco Polo who first brought porcelain to Europe from Jingdezhen. That was in the 14th century, a small grey-green jar amidst his silk and spices. Not long afterwards, the Portuguese were ordering customized pieces from here. Then, in the 1600s, it's estimated that more than 3 million porcelain pieces were shipped to Europe by the Dutch. Meantime, domestically, Jingdezhen had begun to mass-produce porcelain, particularly for the imperial court. In the last dynasty, the Qing, designs became even more varied and marvelously delicate, combining folk and imperial styles.
The artistry on this vase is absolutely phenomenal, but what I find really interesting is the tale behind it. So the ceramic artists of Jingdezhen, they'd never actually seen a foreigner before, but they knew that foreigners came to China bearing gifts for the emperor. So what's depicted here is actually entirely created from their imagination. So that's why you can see grumpy, curly-haired men riding strange, curly-haired animals. I'd say they were pretty accurate.
Lured by the strings and percussion of porcelain instruments, I make my way to Guyao, a popular tourist site that boasts the best preserved kilns from the Qing dynasty. Its official name is Jingdezhen Ancient Kiln Folk Custom Expo Area, so let's stick with Guyao, meaning ancient kiln.
You can see the structure of the house is very simple. We have 2 floors. The second floor is to store the pantry.
It's surreal to think that once upon a time, this place would have been teeming with elite artisans and sweat-drenched kiln masters, all experts in their field. These days, it's an interactive museum where ancient tools and techniques are preserved, like placing unfired pottery into protective containers known as saggers. Now, anyone can join the oldest porcelain production line on Earth. My guide, Minling, tells me how precise the firing process was. Indeed, the saggers ensured each item would be subjected to a uniform temperature, but the temperatures varied widely inside the kiln. So when stacking the saggers, the kiln masters had to take into account the heat requirements for different types of ware, and it could take several days for the kiln to reach the ideal temperature.
The highest temperature, maybe it will go to about 1,400 degrees.
You know, one of the reasons why ceramists from other parts of the world, they couldn't create porcelain for the longest time was because they weren't able to fire furnaces like this to a hot enough temperature. So this one, 1,400 degrees, you know, it's incredible to think that Chinese people all these hundreds of years ago were able to create that sort of temperature.
Our next stop in Guyao is a Qing dynasty workshop still in operation today, where master craftspeople are doing their individual bit to keep this intangible cultural heritage alive.
Wow.
Yeah, so you can see there are many steps to finish for just one ball.
Strolling through the ageless workshop, where ageless artisans work their magic, I'm overcome by a fusion of emotions. It's a lot of admiration for the allegiance to their art, and a little bit of pride. Perhaps some ancestors of mine were involved in the development and continuation of this priceless Chinese invention. That, and a sense of gratitude for safeguarding traditions within these walls, with their hands.
72 steps in one bowl.
Yeah.
Oh my god. So because every master has his own specialty, that's 72 people that one bowl needs.
The ball will become like this one. The color will change into blues.
That is so beautiful. I can't believe this is done by hand. Look at that.
Yeah.
Can you believe
done
that?
by hand.
Cheng Zhanggui is 72 years old and has been behind the wheel for the vast majority of his life. For him, throwing bowls to perfectly consistent dimensions is as natural as breathing, virtually instinctive. Like all the other elderly artists here, he's inherited this individual skill and has spent an entire lifetime honing it.
So you can see it's very amazing, yeah?
Yeah.
Will you have a try?
Sure, why not?
两地的这个中心点有。
锻炼身体。
锻炼身体。好。
My squatting ability sucks.
杀到这里了。
Okay. Oh. Okay. Uh-huh. How did he get it to spin so quickly? It's actually quite taxing on the on the arms and shoulders. He's having a good laugh at me. I think I prefer the playing with the clay part.
Time to cue Unchained Melody.
Oh, it's just so soft and malleable.
Okay, so back to my innocuous position as an observer. This gentleman is making rice pattern or Linglong porcelain, one of the 4 classic types of Jingdezhen pottery, where grain-sized holes are hollowed out and glaze applied to create translucent decorations.
一个这个要弄了多少时间？1个多月啊。1个多月。Wow.
You can see also we have a small one under the light.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's just glaze, is it?
Yeah, only glaze in the middle of the hole.
Wow.
It also seems like a spiritual getaway for the artists, meditative therapy, and on top of that, tremendous fine motor control, especially for this lady, who's completely deaf.
That is beautiful. Yeah, and the colours are so bright as well.
Yeah.
I never thought porcelain objects could be so mesmerizing, nor did I know they could sing.
Oh, wow. It does sound like they're singing.
Oh, it's on camera.
Okay. Woo, it's harmonizing. You know, there's a famous saying about Jingdezhen porcelain. It's as white as jade, as thin as paper, as bright as a mirror, and also as tuneful as a bell. You know, it's crazy to think that this beautiful thing has come from the earth.
Coming up next, the Imperial China of Imperial China. From antique markets to stockpiles of knockoffs, and the elusive holy grail of porcelain, the chicken cup. Yes, baka! The Chin Cup.
So this is an antiques market and it's open every Monday morning. It's called Gui Shi, which means ghost market, and that's because it opens at 4 a.m. Well, I wasn't about to crawl out of bed that early to look at antiques, but now that it's about 6:30, maybe.
Even though it's technically an antiques market, as expected, not everything for sale is a genuine antique. A good proportion of these ceramic bits and bobs are probably decent replicas, so you just have to know your stuff. I love a good wander through bazaars like this, but I only ever look and touch, I never buy, just in case.
南北朝的一个香炉，很好，香炉档次非常高。那我们看这个釉啊，这个形啊，就是这是老的，所以我们内行人一看就是一眼清的东西，就是。
一看就知道了。
Well, the only ceramics I'm familiar with are IKEA mugs and tableware, so all I can do is listen and learn, and amuse myself with bizarre pieces that catch my eye.
It's a bit creepy.
I then come across what seems to be the site of a big dish-hurling brawl in a Chinese restaurant.
这么多时间，你小心脚下啊，别扎脚了。从元朝、明朝、清朝，我手里拿的呢就是元朝的。
We're talking 1,000 years.
哎，知道吧？它这个碗底是比较大的，开锅是比较厚的。
哦。
嗯。
他们是拿来
当茶杯垫。
茶杯垫。
哎，搞装修，贴墙上，贴地下。
The possibilities are endless. Anyway, Mr. Liu says that in Jingdezhen, you can dig up porcelain fragments almost everywhere. But there's one place where the most valuable ones are clustered. Too bad it's now a protected site.
These royal kilns were relatively recently discovered in 2003. Now, there are 7 of them in a row, and they're all shaped like gourds, which is very typical of Ming Dynasty design. It's believed that if we excavate further underground, we'll be able to find millions of pieces of discarded precious imperial porcelain.
And here, you can be sure that these are the real deal.
At the very peak of the development of royal kilns, 58 of them were built here at this site. Now behind me here is a miniature, and it's made of 1,300 pieces of porcelain. Now it just shows the vastness of the entire operation. It's pretty impressive, isn't it? At the Imperial Kilns, it was always better to be safe than sorry. So for example, if the emperor wanted one incense burner in the shape of a duck, they would make 10 of them and fire 10 of them, because even though the process was strictly controlled, the outcome was always a little bit unpredictable. If, by a miracle, 5 of these duck incense burners were fit for the emperor, 4 of them would actually have to be smashed onto the ground because the emperor ordered it and no one else was allowed to use it. So that's why these exhibits that you see are actually restored from these pieces that were shattered.
A tedious but noble task, and the results are no doubt worth a little more than the paraphernalia at Guishi. Next destination, a very different type of porcelain market, a sprawling treasure trove of imperial knockoffs.
So this is Fanjiajing Market, and you can come here to buy millions and millions of copies of objects that were once used by Chinese emperors. So if you want to add a royal touch to your living room, this is the place to come.
The web of alleyways here are like Jingdezhen's arteries, pumping porcelain as its lifeblood. It also feels like a detached microcosm of the outside world, but strangely surrounded by ceaseless stacks of ceramics. And whether or not there are customers, life must go on.
I have to admit, I'm kind of really disoriented right now, and reminds me of getting really lost in Jerusalem, except the religion here is porcelain.
Each bulbous object is glinting and gleaming at me. I wonder, what would the emperor's decree if they were to see their wares becoming so accessible to the common people?
阿姨，这个缸你们卖多少钱？2万。2万。
Now, how about something much smaller in size, but immeasurably larger in legend?
啊，这就是那个激光。
这是激光杯，这是大明神话的激光杯，看。
啊。
这个你看，现在卖200块钱一个。
200块，算便宜了。You know, this cup is considered the holy grail of Chinese porcelain. Well, of course not this cup because it's just a copy, but there are apparently 17 of them left in the entire world, the real ones. And just in 2014, one of them was sold for $36 million US. Can you believe that? Well, later we're going to go and see how these cups are made.
Li Sheng is a master ceramist whose family has been in Jingdezhen's porcelain industry since the Ming Dynasty, over 400 years ago.
它这个叫中国画里面的叫小写意的画啊，带子归宗啊，五伦图，一家大小啊，对这种吉祥如意生活这种热爱和追求。
This cup was designed by one of the Ming emperors himself as a gift to his wife. And even though from a distance it might look like a child's painting, it's said that no one has ever been able to replicate the design and artistry in it. This guy's cups may be the closest we'll ever get.
我现在呢，带你去看看这个制作成功的成品，好吧？好。给你看看这个鸡缸杯，就是刚才做的那个。你像这个就是传统的鸡缸杯，全世界公认的是一个技术的高度和工艺的难度。现在因为各方面的这个技术原材料的提升，让它更加的五彩缤纷。
Conventional or contemporary?
It's been hundreds of years, but people are still buying copies of the chicken cup. You know, porcelain objects like these are still being made using the same traditional processes, and skills are being passed down from generation to generation. I really like how old designs are being modernized though. And you know what? Both these cups are worth 4,000 RMB each. 4,000! If I had that kind of money to spend on teacups, I know what I'd do. Buy both of them.
Tucked away in the ordinary flats of Jingdezhen city is a talent and tirelessness I've never before come across. Li Sheng also owns a tiny workshop that employs seemingly the most focused minds and steadiest hands in the universe.
相当出名的，他从事这个陶瓷行业都20多年了，一辈子就做那么一件事情，拿个笔会画这个瓷器，而且这个瓷器里面他还只画一种，叫什么？叫鳞毛，鳞毛就是花鸟类的。而且西南最高级的一个手法就是叫点染工艺。你看他的手在一直像，他像打印机的那个打点点一样，他一天呢进行了不知道多少万点的这个工作。我们中国人工匠精神呢，从古到今一直存在着。
I'm not sure how much better than perfect these artists can be, but perhaps the immortality of porcelain has something to do with that mindset. Coming up next, the clay and glaze that gave Jingdezhen porcelain its impressive international reputation, and the quaint, quiet township that boomed with it. My mission now is to unearth the secret ingredients that made Jingdezhen porcelain world famous. So we hit the road and drive a little outside of the city centre towards enchanting hamlets and greener pastures.
This is an area called Yaoli, and in the ancient times, this is the very place that Jingdezhen porcelain actually originated. Today, really good quality materials used in the production of porcelain are still being sourced from here.
Yaoli can be translated literally as inside the kiln, and pottery has been produced here since the Tang dynasty over 1,000 years ago. It's as if this unruffled, rustic place escaped the grip of time, almost like an insect fossilized in amber, and has remained unaffected by the hubbub of trade and industry. The village's livelihood largely depended on porcelain, and it was in this area during the Yuan dynasty in the late 13th and 14th century that the essential component in porcelain was discovered, kaolin. It was definitely something to sing about, as it gave Chinese porcelain a globally unmatchable quality. Kaolin is a silicate material providing porcelain with plasticity and structure, and its primary constituent is the mineral kaolinite, found in abundance around Jingdezhen.
这是真的一个古道吗？
对的，是的，就真正的就是我们这当时他们陶工们铺制的，用花岗岩铺制的一条这个古道。
哦，有多少年了？
最少都有700到800年的时间了。
Interestingly, for 2 whole centuries, there were countless failed experiments in Europe to produce porcelain. Finally, the kaolin code was cracked in the early 1700s.
那这边呢，我们到的就是1号矿洞啊，我们到里面去看看。
Oh my god, it's so cold in here. At least 10 degrees colder than outside.
啊，像这种的，受风化程度低的这种，就是高岭土。像这些这种，
这就是高岭土
啊，对，受风化程度就是没有这个风化的。高岭土就是这种石头风化而成的。像那边我们看到那边呢，它那一个洞啊，就是原来的矿洞。
他们要爬上去
啊，对，这边一个，这边一个，这边还有一个。
I really can't imagine what life would have been like for the kaolin miners. You know, they were so poor that they sometimes mixed in kaolinite with their food, much like flour. And also, it was so damp in there that they got arthritis. And when they came out of the tunnels, you know, after 10 or more days, it was so bright outside compared to inside that they had to use cloth to cover their eyes for about half an hour. Otherwise, they'll get blinded. Amazing.
Just a short drive away within Yaoli is an age-old glaze-producing operation that's still churning out a decent supply using age-old techniques.
现在呢，我们看到这边呢，就是补水队。水队呢，它一共组成。
With this brilliant bit of engineering to exploit the ample hydropower available, a significant amount of physical labour is saved, although it's still necessary at some stages. I ask a worker why a machine couldn't do his job.
机器它有它
我们现在参观的就是它的做好的成品，经过一道淘洗、沉淀，然后浓缩，最后的成品呢，就给它做成这种砖块一样的这种的形状。
This is just a brick. How did they know that they could make clear glaze out of this?
像目前为止呢，我们这窑里这个釉呢是最好的釉料了。
I'm back at the beguiling village that once boomed from porcelain production and trade. It's since shed that repute and adopted a low profile, although vestiges of its glory days linger amidst its walls and floors, and in the retold recollections of its residents.
这个是您的房子吗？
哎，这里是我的房子。
哦，你住了多少年了？
我爷爷住在这里了，所以以前这个路呢是好热闹的。这个骑马的、坐轿的、做生意的，到东部用那个高岭土啊，用到景德镇，白天晚上都有，晚上也睡觉睡到房间里都听到那个骑马的滴答滴答都过声了，对吧？
都听到。
听到完了。
一定很多人。
很多人，那这个街上那人都挤得不得了。
I noticed the grooves on the ground left by the endless back and forth of wheelbarrows and carts. It's an almost undetectable and yet indelible mark of Jingdezhen's magnificent past, a foundation to its present and future. The ancient porcelain capital is still the #1 supplier of porcelain to the world. And no, we're definitely not done here yet.
Jingdezhen not only gave China its name, but it gave China to the world. And still, to this day, porcelain is prized for its durability, its delicacy, and design. Now that we know a little bit about the history behind porcelain and also the processes and materials behind porcelain, we can dig a little bit deeper and discover more about the hands and hearts that create it. My name's Dui. Join me next time on Travelogue for the second half of this journey in Jingdezhen.